It's time once again for Western New York Athletics High School Football Weekly, hosted by Frank Wolf with Dick Gallagher from WGRZ High School Sports. Today's show is brought to you by Scroy Financial of West Seneca, the Paul Wolf Agency in Kenmore, CSA Prep Star, the North End Bar and Grill, Cipriano Realtors, BuffaloSportsPage.com, and by Southtown Trophies in Orchard Park, New York, a proud sponsor of the Buffalo Sports Page Athlete of the Week Award, announced each week on BuffaloSportsPage.com.
Hi, I'm Pat Scroy, president of Scroy Financial. We've been helping people realize their financial dreams for nearly 50 years. Your goals may include building wealth for a comfortable retirement, protection from the burdens of long-term care, or leaving a legacy to your children and grandchildren. With all these diverse goals, retirement planning should not be a one-size-fits-all process, and at Scroy Financial it's not. Whether you are just getting started or nearing retirement, give us a call. Plan, protect, invest. It's your life. Scroy Financial can help.
There are good hands and great hands. Hi, I'm Paul Wolf. We all know that good hands usually turn into losers. When it comes to all your insurance needs, our hands are unbeatable.
Call the Wolf at 835-9653 today.
Welcome to another edition of WNYAthletics High School Football Weekly. I am Frank Wolf of WNYAthletics. I'm joined again by the lovely Dick Gallagher from WGRZ High School Sports. And Dick, it was another fabulous week 4 of high school football. It was a crazy start, a crazy ending for sure, but we got all the games in. And what was your takeaway from week 4?
Well, I think some of the games were outstanding, and there was only a few that had to be played, Saturday or on Monday. But the weather forecasters hit it right. Everyone was aware of what was going on. And like the Cheektowaga Pioneer game, supposed to go on at 7, didn't go on until 8, but at least they got the games in.
Yep. That's the most important part, and the kids had a lot of fun. There were some scary moments down at CSP. I know that there were some tornado warnings, and they ended up starting the game but finished up on Saturday morning. Little Valley and Maple Grove ended up playing on Monday, and that was an incredible night for Easton Tanner and Carson Crisp,
right,
the quarterback there. They connected for 6 touchdowns through the air. So that was just an incredible feat by him. But there was a lot of great performances turned in last weekend. I'll start right away with the huge blowout, if you want to call it. West Seneca East, the Trojans showed that they are alive and well, and they're going to be a major player in A. They routed Starpoint 59-22, a game that was, we thought that was going to be a high-scoring affair, back and forth, but it turned out to be where the Trojans just took over on the line and pretty much dictated how that game was going to go. What are your thoughts on that amazing
Well, I think that
game?
we take a look at one of the tremendous advantages for West Seneca East this year is their line. It's outstanding. When you take a look at Nick Haim, Dylan McNutley, Jack Turner, Jesse Pfeiffer, Chase Pirro, Cam Gallagher, it's no wonder they dominated Starpoint. But one thing stood out was Aaron Chase had 3 games, 1,200 yards, 16 touchdowns, got 128 yards in that game, no touchdowns. Really got to give credit to Jim Marino and his coaching staff for having that team prepared.
Absolutely. We talk about Starpoint. Heading into that game, Dick, there was a lot of talk about that team and how good they were, but if you look at them, those first 3 games that they played, you mentioned Aaron Chase had a great start, threw a lot of touchdowns, and he's got an incredible receiving corps. Well, week 1 was at Grand Island. The Vikings lose their quarterback in the first quarter there. They played Amherst and then Maritime, and those teams have combined for 1 win this year. So we weren't really sure just how good Starpoint was. The lack of a running game seemed to catch up with them this week against West Seneca East.
Right, and they've got to play, Waynesville South this Friday, and then they'll play South Park a week from Friday, and those are 2 tough matchups for the Spartans.
Specifically with Williamsville South, they're coming off their first win of the season. They finally got things clicking on offense with Joey Battaglia, who was a Connolly Cup nominee this week. That's a tough game for Starpoint, coming up to play on a Friday night at Williamsville South, coming off a devastating defeat. So we're going to have to keep close eyes on that one, because really that could go either way. And for Williamsville South, that's the season. I mean, they have to win this game. They don't have a choice.
Right.
If they want to play for a meaningful playoff game and not go to the Chuck Bucky Bowl, they have to win this game.
Yeah, and Jamel Jones made West New York last year. He's outstanding on both sides of the ball, and he's going to be a key player for the Billies in that game.
For West Seneca East, everything they touched turned to gold. Sean Dolak, who was an early season Conley Cup nominee and projected to be a finalist, he's absolutely having that type of season.
He and Mike Riegerman were the two players over the weekend that just were unbelievable. And they're not only good defensive players, offensive players, tremendous leaders. And when you take a look at Sean, he had double-digit tackles. He had, I think, 249 yards rushing, 3 or 4 touchdowns. And then you look at Mike Riegerman. He had a game and a half as far as I was concerned. When you look at what he did on both sides of the ball, and particularly after Cheektowaga scored, he took the ball 5 times, went about 70 yards.
Yeah.
Then he got down to about 7 or 8 yard line, gave him the ball again. He carried about 3 or 4 players, defensive players, into the end zone. He's a kid, 6'3", 190, 200 pounds, a tremendous wrestler, outstanding on both sides of the ball, has a 96 GPA, and I think I've mentioned before, I don't understand why he hasn't received any scholarship offers when you watch him play.
Yeah, I wonder if he has them and isn't just saying that he has them or what, but I haven't heard a word either way. But definitely, hopefully UB has their eye on a kid like that. You don't want to let a guy like that out of the area. I'll tell you what impressed me about Riegerman the most was, if you notice, they were up, I believe they were up 7-0 at the time, and Riegerman fluffed a punt, right? And turned the ball over. A couple plays later, Keyshawn Beal is in the end zone. He could have folded the tent right there, could have got really down, but he didn't. He persevered and literally took that personally and took over the game, because he didn't do a whole lot offensively in the first half. I mean, he made his presence felt, no question about it, but it was really in the second half where he took that game over, and a lot of it had to do with that one particular play in which he muffed a punt. I should say, I believe he did the same thing against Maryville a week earlier, had a special team snafu. So if there's one area for Pioneer where they're going to want to get better on, it's definitely on the special teams in terms of their their punting unit. They definitely want to get things squared away there. That's one area they're going to want to get better. But we talked about a little bit about it. Pioneer 33-14 winners over Cheektowaga in the Class B. Both came in at 3-0. What surprised me about Cheektowaga was the fact that they continued to try throwing the ball. The wind was atrocious. It was nobody's friend. You know, I kept on looking up at the American flag. It was blowing in every single direction possible, yet they kept throwing the ball. Now, Keyshawn Beal has a great arm. There's no question about it. And he's a Conley Cup finalist from a year ago. But he had trouble putting the ball where it needed to be, and they kept on going to the throw. Hence, 3 and outs, giving Pioneer good field position and giving them the ball back. I just couldn't understand that.
But there were 8 plays that the Cheektowaga Warriors dropped the ball right in their hands, looking for it, trying to do it like this and then dropping it. That could have been the difference, particularly as far as momentum and everything else. But I think the other thing too is Cheektowaga's running game is not like it has been in the last few years.
Yeah.
They don't have a dominant back that's going to take over and take it to the house. But it'll be interesting, because I think that it'll be interesting to see how the Warriors rebound. But Pioneer basically has, I think, a route for an undefeated regular season, with getting the #1 spot in the playoffs. And that seeding in Class B is going to be very interesting, just as it's going to be in Class A.
So they have a game, Cheektowaga has a game coming up against Lackawanna. Win or lose, that's not going to hurt them in the standings. But they have Newport following that, who is having a tough season. And then Maryville, the rivalry game, in which they've owned Maryville the last few years. That really could be that game there is could be a must win for one of those teams for sure.
It's got to be a must win, because you're going to pick 3 first, 3 second, best 2 thirds. Whoever loses that game is going to get one of those two the last two spots.
Yeah.
You get one of those last two spots, then you're going to be going against Pioneer, Albion, and that game's going to be huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another big game over the weekend, I thought anyways, was Niagara Wheatfield, undefeated, heading down to Jamestown, who arguably is missing one of their better players in Savon Van Sickle. Niagara Wheatfield riding the coattails of Jordan Parks and that defense this year, off to a tremendous start, 3-0. But I had said this on last week's show, that's an awful long bus ride for a team. And if you're overconfident and you're heading down, the 80, 90 miles away that it is, you can lose focus easily. Couple that with the delay. They don't start that game till 8:30. So now you're going down to Jamestown. You're getting there early. There's nowhere to go but the bus. So you're sitting on the bus. It's tough to stay focused. And Jamestown pounced on them early, and they ended up winning that game 26-14. I was not surprised in the least. What are your feelings coming out of that game?
Well, I think I mentioned it last week. Jamestown's had to make all those trips, hundreds, if not thousands over the years, to come up here and play. And it hasn't hurt them at all. Depends on how you're focused, how confident you are, and how well coached you are. And I think it surprised me that Jamestown was able to win that game. But now we'll see what happens with Wheatfield and how they're going to rebound. And Jamestown now is back in the mix, because West Seneca West to me is the class of A1, and now Jamestown and Niagara Wheatfield are going to be battling out for the second spot.
Yeah. We did learn that Jordan Parks was injured at the end of that game. It was a 2-touchdown game. Questionable why he was still in there so late, but when you have a guy that's as competitive as Jordan Parks is, you're not going to tell that kid he's coming off the field. So, you can't really blame anyone for him being out there. The kid's a competitor. He wants to win, and they still were in the game. I mean, you score a touchdown and get the ball back on an onside kick, it's a different story. I mean, we're having what could be having a completely different conversation right now, but the fact of the matter is Jamestown gets the upset, and they are right back in the thick of things. They've got a win over Kenmore West. This week, Jamestown, I believe, is heading up to West Seneca West.
Right.
So that's going to could be their season right there, for all intents and purposes. Niagara Wheatfield has a Friday night game against Kenmore West, a team that's starting to play better football. They've won 2 in a row. They've got some confidence. And Niagara Wheatfield, it's possible they could be without Jordan Parks this Friday night. We'll have to see. It is a homecoming game. They're bringing lights in. It's a special event. Parks wants to be on the field, but if he's uninjured and not able to go, that could be a tough one for Niagara Wheatfield.
Right, and I think Jamestown's win was huge, because if you get in the tiebreaker, first tiebreaker is head-to-head, so that's going to put Wheatfield possibly out of the playoffs.
Absolutely.
It's based on the head-to-head, but there's three more weeks, and a lot of things can happen.
So another game over the weekend, Friday night, that turned out to be pretty crazy was the finish between Bennett and Williamsville North. And we've been talking about this, Dick. Bennett is a much improved team over last season. This is their second year in AA, and things are starting to catch up with them. The flow of the game. Justin Campbell is a player. Dejai Perry, he might have been a transfer, but he knows what it's like to play against big teams. He played against all the tough ones last year with Canisius and Joes and so on and so forth as a member of St. Mary's of Lancaster. So he understands how high the bar is. So he didn't need to be coached up to play in AA. He had played top-level teams in our area. He's playing really well. And then Will North. They're in trouble, Dick. There's no other way to say it. What Will North has going for them, aside for these last 2 losses, Lancaster and now Bennett, they have a halfway decent schedule. If they can get by OP, and that's no guarantee. They play OP this week at 1 o'clock on Saturday, a rare Saturday afternoon game for Will North. They do have Lockport, Niagara Falls, and Hutch Tech coming up. It's possible they stay in the race if they can run the table, but they have to run the table to guarantee themselves a shot at one of those top 4 positions.
Right, and when you look at how that game ended, and the fact that there was a bad snap from center, and there was a fumble, and then Bennett gets the ball. There was a few seconds left on the clock that make the Hail Mary happen. And When you look at that that game, you know, that's why they say it's a Hail Mary, because you're praying, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to win. But you got to give credit to Stevie McDuffie. They knew what the kids had to do. They got down there, they made the play. But if you look at Bennett, has they play Lancaster this Thursday. They have Orchard Park, they have Hudstack, and they have Niagara Falls. To me, when you take a look at it, Lancaster, Orchard Park, and Bennett appear to be three locks. Then the fourth spot is going to be between Williamsville North. Clarence still an outside shot because they've still got to play. When you take a look at their lineup, they're playing the remaining games: Niagara Falls, Hudstack, Orchard Park, and Lockport. But then when you look at the number of points Lockport put on Orchard Park, 34-38, that's huge. And Malik Brooks is playing just in his senior year. He's an all-West New York candidate. He's a tremendous athlete.
I couldn't agree with you more. So that Lockport's a scary scenario because they do have a win already. They have a win in AA, and Will North only has one win. But if you look at the schedules, again, Will North does have OP. That if Will North can beat OP, and if Lockport can win this week, that Lockport-Will North game suddenly is a game that both teams need to have.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just a lot of crazy scenarios coming up for each team. Hudstack at 0-3 is going to have a tough time getting in there, but Niagara Falls is 1-2, and Lockport is 1-3. So there's definitely no room for error right now in Class AA.
I think one of the things that, after watching the teams play, how this plays out, is any one of the four teams that are going to make the Class AA playoffs can win it. There's no dominant team that's just going to go in like Lancaster has been the last couple of weeks. And it'll be interesting how this plays out, but it depends on what team shows up, how hard they play, what the quarterback play, and also the battle between turnovers and stupid penalties.
Yeah. And Lancaster hasn't really coasted either. I know they're 4-0, 3-0. They're 4-0 in the division, but they haven't really had an easy ride. They've had tough games. Will North was an extremely tough game for them, and Clarence was a tough game for them, and I have no doubt that Bennett is going to be an extremely tough game for them on Thursday. Bennett was thoroughly embarrassed last year at Lancaster, thoroughly embarrassed. So they are going to watch that film again. They are going to remember what happened in Lancaster. Bennett will be ready on Thursday night. They're playing a Lancaster team that has not lost to a Section VI opponent in almost 3 years. So there's a lot for Bennett to digest, and who knows? It's possible you could see some sort of update or upset this Thursday night. I know Lancaster doesn't want to hear that. I know they'll be ready to play, but this is a game right now that all eyes in Western New York should be paying attention to.
Right, and if you look at Bennett, the overall record of the teams that they played is 6-10. Lancaster or Orchard Park is 5-10. So when you look at some of these schools now are playing the top teams.
Yeah.
I think Hudstack has shot themselves in the foot. There's a couple of games that they've let go away that they could have won if they were in the mix. They could be one of the final four.
I agree with you there. We're going to take a quick time out. We're going to get back into it. Segment 2, we're going to talk about the standings. We're going to start maybe in A and go all the way to D. We've pretty much touched on AA, but we'll be back with WNY Inside High School Football Weekly after a note from our sponsor. Welcome back to WNYAthletics High School Football Weekly. This is Frank Wolf along with Dick Gallagher again from WGRZ. We're talking about the action from Week 4, and we're also talking about what lies ahead here in Week 5, and we're talking about the different divisions. We just did Class AA. We're going to get right back into Class A, and I know we've already talked about a couple of these teams, but if we want to take an in-depth look at what they need to do to qualify for the playoffs. So if we're in A1, we talked a little bit about West Seneca West. They're 3-0 and have Jamestown coming up this week, followed by another highly anticipated game with Niagara Wheatfield. Niagara Wheatfield coming off a big loss at Jamestown, has Kenmore West this week, and then of course, as I just mentioned, at West Seneca West. Jamestown, they're at West Seneca West this week. They have Frontier next week, and then the dark horse, Ken West, at Niagara Wheatfield this week, and then a home date with Hamburg. So things are looking very interesting in A1. As you mentioned, Dick, only the top 2 teams are guaranteed playoff spots. You got to believe West Seneca West has the top spot locked up. Am I correct in saying that? I hate to count anybody out, but you got to believe West Seneca West has the top spot. Who's going to beat them?
Well, I think that given the fact that they won a state championship last year, they have so many of those kids coming back this year. I don't see any team in Western New York being able to beat them, but that's why you play the game. And if you take a look at, the quarterback, Robertson, coming over from Sweet Home, sitting out the first couple of games, then playing now. Last week he got, I think, 253 yards, a few touchdowns. Now that's allowed Liam Shore just to concentrate on the defense, which is outstanding. They've only given up 8 points in 4 games. So to me, they're a lock. Then it's between Ken West, Jamestown, and Niagara Wheatfield as far as the other spot.
So that brings up a discussion about Ken West, Niagara Wheatfield this week. Because Ken West already has that loss to Jamestown.
Right.
Niagara Wheatfield's lost to Jamestown. This year, I think the loser of this game could be completely out of the picture.
I don't know. Maybe my memory doesn't serve me. Didn't Kenmore West, did they lose to Jamestown?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But it comes down to that they've got to win. You've got to go in with the intent of winning every game now.
Sure.
Because every game counts big time.
I noticed one thing about the West Seneca West defense. If there's any holes there, or if there's any one weakness, it's a quarterback that can run the ball, an added dynamic. And that's where I think this Niagara Wheatfield game is going to be a tougher game for West Seneca West than previous games, because you have Jordan Parks back there. I think Jordan Parks adds an element to the game that obviously is difficult for coaches to defend, because he's such a good runner and he can throw the ball. I don't think Niagara Wheatfield can beat them, but I think this quarterback is going to give them fits and at least keep it closer than most people might think.
I think that
It's 2 weeks away, but still.
I think if you have Glinsky, Shore, Haydick, Ball, just to mention a few, I don't see that happening. I just think that their defense is so strong, particularly just giving up 8 points in 4 games, and they played they'll be playing Jamestown with Boggs, and he's a decent quarterback. But I just think it comes down to winning breeds winning, and West didn't do too much for 12 years now, so they wound up with the state championship. Now when you look at it, they're just playing outstanding ball.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see anybody beating them. I definitely fully expect to see them at New Era Field. But I think a running quarterback could give them a little bit of trouble. I don't think that Niagara Wheatfield can beat them, but I think that quarterback is going to give them a run for their money. You want to see a competitive game. Number one, you want to see a competitive game. We'll have to see. The jury's out on that, and I might have to eat some crow on that. But I expect that to be a much closer game than people realize. I think that's a 2-touchdown game in favor of West, but I think that Jordan Parks is going to keep them in the classroom a little bit longer, studying the film, because he is an exceptional quarterback. In A2, Dick, this is very interesting. Does Grand Island have a lock on A2, sitting at 3-0? They've got Will East this week, who needs a win to stay close, and then you got a game against Kenmore East. Camp Sianco's back. They've got 2 nice wins in a row. 3 nice wins in a row, excuse me. Talk about Grand Island in A2.
Well, Camp Sianco, when he got hurt against Starpoint, that took the wind out of their sails, and they never recovered. Then you take what they look like with him, and then I think it's Justin Gorel, who's an outstanding wide receiver, and they have one of the better passing combinations with Sianco. And then Jeremiah Wilkes, who was also hurt in that first game, he's back. He made 8 tackles last week. So I think they're a lock for number 1 And then I think number 2 depends on how it plays out, depending on, Williamsville East. North Tonawanda, to me, is a real big disappointment. I thought they'd be a lot stronger. But Williamsville East, Grand Island's aware that they can play the game. Mike Torillo's an outstanding coach, and they lit it up last week. So that's a game that'll be important for the Flames.
Yeah. Now we've learned that Ken East will have a new quarterback this week.
Murdy.
Yeah, he's not playing. He's left the team for reasons I'm not sure. But Kemmer East seemed like they were on a roll until they met up with McKinley this past week. That was a tough one for them. McKinley does have that win over Will East, so they should be locked into that 2 spot. They have North Tonawanda at home this week, and then at Sweet Home, who hasn't won a game yet either. So McKinley easily could be 4-1 and should have that 2nd spot locked up.
The North End Bar and Grill in Kenmore is the perfect place for friends to get together, enjoy a great menu that includes all the local favorites like wings, roast beef on weck, and the best Friday fish fry in town. Serving daily specials like spaghetti and meatballs, flavorful hamburgers and barbecued ribs, and enjoy 12 beers on tap, including IPAs. The North End Bar and Grill, located at 2692 Elmwood Avenue near Girard. To order takeout or to reserve a table, give us a call at 877-9000 or visit us on the web at northendbarandgrill.com.
Talk a little bit about Class A3 right now. South Park, West Seneca East, Starpoint, and Will South all still have a chance at those top 2 or even 3 spots, depending on how division matchups play out. But West Seneca East really showing how good they are after that clobbering of Starpoint last Friday night. They've got a big one, though, again against South Park this Friday. A lot to talk about on that one. Both teams are coming in at 3-0 in league play, 4-0 overall. West Seneca East has scored 164 points this year. South Park, though, has only given up 29. So you're going to have those 2 lines, the offensive line of South Park against the defensive line is at West Seneca East, and vice versa. That's going to be something to watch this Friday night.
Well, South Park's only scored 64 points. And that's totally different than what they've done in the past few years. They're missing a couple of key offensive players, and that to me could be the difference because West Seneca East line is big, they're physical, and both teams love smash mouth football. So that's good. This could be a good, fun game to watch.
And last year, when they met up in the playoffs, I believe it was just a few turnovers that separated that game because West Seneca East gave them a game. It just, unfortunate incidents sometimes get the better of you, and that's what happened last year in that playoff game. And West Seneca East hasn't forgotten. They've got a lot to prove. They're coming in with a ton of confidence after what they did to Starpoint. So that's going to be a tough one. We'll have to see how that plays out. But, until you've beaten South Park on a regular basis, the favorites are going to be the Sparks.
Well, but the Trojans did beat a couple of years ago, going to all high. They were down by 14 points. They came back and beat the Sparks. It wouldn't surprise me if the Trojans win.
Not at all.
Mainly because they're, like you mentioned, they're coming with so much confidence, but they're playing also a totally different team. And when you look at these 2 teams, it's just physical smash mouth football from the opening second to the last second, and it's always a fun game to watch. And you have 2 outstanding coaches, Timmy Delaney and Jim Marino.
And then Starpoint has to get back on track. They play Will South at Will South this Friday. We talked about that earlier in the program. So that's a must-win game for them. Will South, if they happen to win that game, they're right back in the conversation. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Down in B, Pioneers running the show right now in B1, especially after going back-to-back against the heavyweights of B1 in Maryvale and Cheektowaga. They didn't just beat them. They beat Cheektowaga handily. Maryvale was a little bit of a tougher game for them. They only won 28-20, but still, and their season gets a little bit easier. Pioneers does. Cheektowaga and Maryvale, not so much. They still have to play each other, and that could turn out to be who's looking in and who's not going to get into the playoffs.
Well, yeah, and even if whoever loses that game gets into the playoffs, they're going to have a 7th or 8th seed. Then you're going to have to come in and play Pioneer or Albion if they get the first 2 seeds. So that game is extremely important. Last year they played for the sectional championship. Cheektowaga won by, I think, 1 point in overtime. So, plus it's a town rivalry, and everyone will be up for that game. Plus, the game is going to be at Cheektowaga, and that new complex is outstanding.
Yeah, and you know what? It's one of those things. Again, you haven't beaten them in a while. This is, this is one of those games where you have to get over the hump. We talked about it a couple of shows ago with CSP. They haven't been able to beat Maple Grove. They have to get over that hump. They have to learn to win big games. And Maryville, that's an extremely big game for them now. There won't be a bigger game in the season. If they happen to get into that game, with still just a 1 loss, that's the biggest game in that school's history for the past 5 or 6 years at least. So they're going to have to learn to win as a team, that particular unit. We'll have to see what happens, but that's the biggest game of the year right now for Maryville.
And as the sleeper in the B's is Fredonia Brockton.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Down in B3, you're talking Fredonia, Brockton. You're also looking at Dunkirk down there. They're both having exceptional seasons. I believe Dunkirk is on top thanks to point differential. I could be wrong on that. I've been wrong before. But Fredonia and where are we here? Where is it?
Fredonia Brockton.
Yeah, Fredonia Brockton. They're 3-0, and where Dunkirk is 4-0. You talk about the Cleckley kid down in Dunkirk having a phenomenal year. Their defense is playing pretty good too, only giving up 48 points.
But Cleckley's running mate was Taiwan Wright, only a junior, all-West New York candidate, excelled on both sides of the ball, tremendous speed, and he's gone for the season. That hurts them big time.
Huge loss. Tonawanda, you got to start talking about them a little bit again, only because they have won 2 games in a row. The loss against Dunkirk really turned that program around. No one was taking them seriously. Dunkirk thought they were going to walk all over them. It didn't happen. Tonawanda gained a lot of confidence after that game. They've beaten Newfane, and they beat who else did they beat? They just beat Newfane, and I think they beat Newfane, and now they just beat Alden.
Right.
So Tonawanda, they have a running game, and they have a young quarterback there, and their defense is playing exceptionally well with that kid Frazier, and then Bradle at the tailback position.
He's 5'6", 160 pounds. He's going to be one of the smallest running backs, but he's got a heart that's gold, and he just plays on both sides of the ball.
So we'll have to see what happens there. Tonawanda has a big game coming up against Fredonia. That's going to end up being their season right there. I mean, they have to win this week, and then you got Fredonia, and you can't look past it. But right now, if you're Tonawanda, you got a lot of confidence, and you just got to keep on winning and hope that you can get by Fredonia. And then Dunkirk and Fredonia still have to play. So Tonawanda, they may have a shot at this.
Right, and
you never know.
Joe Kelly's done an exceptional job of taking the program that for quite a few years was down, bringing it up to where now it's competitive.
And they shut out an opponent last week, something they haven't done since, I think, 2007.
Yeah.
So kudos to Tonawanda. The Warriors are off to a good start. Albion, Olean, and B2. With Medina losing this past week to Olean, Olean gets a little bit of breathing room, and then Albion, they're sitting pretty at 3-0. I'm looking at their schedule the rest of the way. Albion, they had the nice big win over Lackawanna a couple of weeks ago. But Albion and B2, they've got Springville, Iroquois, non-leaguer, and then Medina, Lindenville, and that's the end of the year.
Right. They should beat Springville and Iroquois, and they'll come down to Medina in the rivalry, which anything can happen. But I think when you take a look at Bryce Pritchard, Ben Restivo, and Eugene Harrison, they're the nucleus for that team, and they're dominating everyone.
Medina this week, they're going to play Maritime, non-leaguer, but then they've got at Lackawanna and then Albion, so that'll say a lot about their program. That's a tough stretch of games.
Right.
Even with Maritime, I think that's a good game right there, because Maritime is tough, they're physical, and they got a lot of athletes. So Maritime or Medina will have their work cut out, but they'll see how that game could push them to be able to play with a team like Lackawanna and even Albion. So that's a good matchup for them, but in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, Medina's got Isaiah Rem. He's 6'3", 6'4", 190 pounds, tremendous athlete. And they're, I think going to have a tough battle when you're looking at the teams that they're playing. But the one thing that the Mustangs don't do is they don't quit. They play hard, they play physical. And, it's going to be very interesting the last 3 weeks as far as who's win, who's loses, and who's going to be involved in the playoffs.
Absolutely. We're going to take another quick break here before we wrap things up. We're going to get into C, D, and a little bit of the Monsignor Martin, and we'll talk about the top games coming up this weekend. For Frank Wolf and Dick Gallagher, we'll be back after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to WNY Athletics High School Football Weekly for our final segment. Dick, we are all the way down into Class C North, where Clevehill continues to run roughshod over that division. They had a big win against Wilson. They've beaten Gowanda Pine Valley, sitting pretty at 3-0. What else can you say about Clevehill? It's their division to lose at this point.
It's their division to lose, and then if you take a look at the playoff, Clevehill, Wilson, Silver Creek, Gowanda be the 4 teams in North, and then there'll be a crossover playing the 4 teams from the South.
Yeah, I looked at Akron's schedule just to if we were going to rule them out completely. They do have that game against Clevehill, which kind of is like the punch in the gut for them. And then they have a game against Gowanda Pine Valley, Roy Hart at Clevehill, and then Gowanda Pine Valley. So they have an absolutely tough stretch of games for Akron. They definitely have to run the table to get in. I had a couple of friends down in that area that wanted to know what their chances were, and I said, hey, you can beat Clevehill. There you go. But you still got a lot of work to do. There's no easy games left for Akron, absolutely not. Who's playing Wilson this week? I forgot. Is it Gowanda Vine? Silver Creek. We think we have an idea that they're going to get in, but they play at Clevehill this week. A game that I believe is at Clevehill.
Right.
They have the field ready, but then they go to Gowanda. They're home against Gowanda Pine Valley, and then they have a crossover game with Chautauqua Lake. So Gowanda Pine Valley is sitting pretty good. Excuse me. Silver Creek has a tough schedule as well.
Right.
To close out the year. Now you go down into C South. Southwestern, 4-0 league, and in the division overall, they're both 4-0 there. The 2 games ahead of Randolph, who they've beaten, Cassadaga Falconer, they're at 2-1. I think they're one of the toughest teams that nobody likes to talk about in C South. They had Fredonia beat this past weekend.
Well, they had only won 21-7, and Cole Snyder didn't have the game that, particularly stat-wise, that he's had the first 3. But some of that can be attributed to the weather, I think. They were playing
for sure.
in, some not too healthy weather.
Franklinville-Ellicottville, a team that has done really well over the years. They had Brock Bleacha. They've lost a lot of seniors this past year. They've got at Cassadaga Falconer, and then Randolph at home. They're on the outside looking in right now, but they played a pretty good game last week, beating Porterville 28-7. They have a win over Salamanca. Can Franklinville-Ellicottville make a run?
I don't think so. I think when you take a look at the South, and you have Cassadaga Valley, Falconer, you have Southwestern, Randolph, and Frewsburg, and then Chautauqua Lake. I think those are the 4 teams that have an edge as far as being able to be in the playoffs. We
go down into the D division, and it's CSP looking pretty good at 4-0 on the year, 3-0 in league play. They have a game this week against Depew that doesn't mean anything, but they will have another day with Maple Grove, who just played Monday, and Dick, Easton Tanner, and Carson Crisp had an unbelievable game. But still, Maple Grove and CSP looks like they're going to run that division, and it appears Catalina Valley will draw CSP in week 1, and then Maple Grove, Salamanca will be that other playoff game. Can Salamanca play with Maple Grove?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Particularly when you look at what they did to Cattaraugus Valley and CSP also will be hosting Maple Grove in week 6, which is going to be huge.
Yeah, it will be. Monsignor Martin, Aquinas, what can you say? They're beating everybody.
Well, whoever wins Class AA in Section 6 is probably going to have to face either Aquinas or McQuay.
Yeah.
Both teams, McQuay's really, last couple of years, they've got back to where they were. And if you take the record this year for the Catholic schools, 6 teams, 6-18.
Yeah.
St. Joe's, Canisius, huge rivalry, one of the best. Both teams are 1-3. When's the last time that happened? Then if you take both teams that have been known for their strong defenses, both are giving up almost 35 points a game. And so when you take a look at this game, it's going to be who avoids the turnovers, who avoids the stupid penalties, and basically what quarterback is going to have the best game, either Christian or Micah.
That's what it's going to come down to. I like Joe's line. I brought up Aquinas, and I knew you would allude to it, that whoever comes out of AA is going to have to play them, and Aquinas has run over. They ran over. Well, Canisius gave them a game, I would say. Some turnovers cost them.
There's only 3 plays in that game that turned it around.
So, but they did beat Canisius and St. Joe, so whoever comes out of AA is going to have their hands full. That's why I brought them up. But O'Hara and St. Francis last Saturday, we talked about that last week. We said there was going to be a shootout, and it absolutely was. What else could you possibly say about sophomore quarterback Jacob Britz? He's got to have a seat at that Final 10 table. He's having a Connolly Cup type year.
He's the real deal. He had 387 yards in that game, 5 touchdowns. Dominic Thomas, outstanding wide receiver. He had, I think, 255 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns. And when you take a look at Cardinal O'Hara, they've got 4 or 5 kids that are all Western New York candidates. They're tremendously talented. They just did not have the depth that St. Francis had.
Yeah, that's where you run into trouble, and that's exactly why they're divided up the way they are. O'Hara can play with them, but when it comes down to that fourth quarter and you need the depth, that's where O'Hara is just falling a little bit short. So it is what it is, but Timon and St. Mary's still struggling a little bit. Timon's numbers are up, so we expect them to be a little bit more competitive. They're supposed to play at the stadium in a couple of weeks, and O'Hara also has a game with Timon at the stadium, so it's part of the MSG package with the Monsignor Martin. This Friday night, though, the rivalry continues. St. Joe's and Canisius. I wish I had all my notes. Tim Wegerson sent me a nice history of the rivalry and how many times St. Joe's has won and how many times Canisius has won. I know St. Joe's, I believe, leads the rivalry, but they have Canisius hasn't lost to Joe's in like 9 straight. Of course, there's a tie in there somewhere, but Canisius has really had the advantage as of late. Has St. Joe's narrowed the gap at all?
Canisius has won 9 straight games. In the last couple of years, Jamison and Nicholas were really studs. Jamison and Nicholas are back. What I can understand is when you take a look at the line of St. Joe's, and Doty and Gambino and McDougal, 6'5", 6'6", 6'3", 280, 300, 310. It's like, what's going on? And so that when you match them up against Canisius, because Canisius lost their best line on Ben Shanley, who could some concussion protocol, but he's not going to play the rest of the season. That hurts them big time. To me, it's just going to come down to who wants it the most, who's going to be focused and avoid the turnovers, avoid the penalties. And I think it's going to come down to who plays the best at quarterback.
How has Christian Value adapted so far in the Monsignor Martin? How has he looked to you?
I think he looks well. And I think that when you take a look at some of the times, you're throwing passes and all of a sudden they're dropped. But when Christian's got only a junior, he's already got offers from Michigan, Temple, UB. So he's got to bring his A game. This is probably the biggest game that he's played in his career, at least here. And it'll just come down to who wants it. And Micah has had, somewhat decent stats. He's trying to two-way quarterback, but to me the line has to step up. And I think it's Morgan had 140 yards rushing, David, for St. Joe's, and they need to get something from their rushing game so they can control the clock.
That's what it's going to come down to in the trenches, and who has the ball and who dictates what goes on out of the backfield. The most important, I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
I do like the speed of Canisius. But I think St. Joe's, with their offensive line play, especially with Doty, they're going to be a handful for Canisius, and it's a rivalry game. St. Joe's almost won last year.
They should have won.
They should have won. Exactly. So don't count St. Joe's out. Do you want to put a prediction on that, or should we save that for off the air?
Pardon?
Do you want to put a prediction for that game, or you want to put it off the air?
Well, if you're going to beat the champ, you got to beat Canisius.
Yeah.
And I just think that Canisius got some good speed, but St. Joe's with Micah Brown, McCarley, they've got some speed too. And I'll just give the edge to, given the fact that St. Joe's gives up the home field by playing in New Era, to me is huge.
Yeah.
But I'll go with Canisius, for their 10th consecutive win. But if St. Joe's win,
you're not going to be surprised.
It's not going to be an upset.
No, absolutely not. I agree with you. Well, Dick, another show is in the books. I'm looking forward to talking to you again next week on WNYAthletics High School Football Weekly. We want to thank our advertisers, and we'll see you next week. For Dick Gallagher of WGRZ High School Sports, I am Frank Wolf. See you next week.
Today's show is brought to you by Scroy Financial of West Seneca, the Paul Wolf Agency in Kenmore, CSA Prep Star, the North End Bar and Grill, Cipriano Realtors, BuffaloSportsPage.com, and by Southtown Trophies in Orchard Park, New York, a proud sponsor of the Buffalo Sports Page Athlete of the Week Award, announced each week on BuffaloSportsPage.com.